Looks like I'm live. I'm live streaming. Okay, I don't expect this to be a particularly long session, probably, but it's just a recap, really, of what's going on, what's been going on, and where we go from here. So we'll recap what's been. Made some good progress. I haven't been really live streaming the last few days, but we're humming along up to what, 19 minutes and 39 seconds. So we're approaching the 20-minute point. Okay, so just in case Tom Doing Art shows up here, I wanted to show you guys something because I really am curious about this. I did a couple shots the other day in Tahoma, just because, just to mix things up, really. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, I think that was the first one I did, which you'll see in the show here in just a minute. But it's basically, if you look at it, the rendered version, you can kind of see what's really going on. So, if anybody has any questions about basically how this is done, there's a fair amount of masking going on. You can see from the effects schematic that we've got on the stage schematic, we've got the plastic tool coming into play, but then there's a fairly, not overly complex, but there's definitely some manipulation going on in order to make things appear in front of the things they're supposed to appear in front of and that sort of thing. So anyway, if anybody has questions about how that was done or whatever, feel free to ask. This is the question I have, though. Okay, so the next scene I did after this one, we'll see if it happens now, but it happened repeatedly where, and this is not a complex scene. It was literally just pencil test and then one layer of ink and paint. And at the fill stage, we'll see if it happens. Yep, there it goes. And I have not been able to see this not happen. I actually loaded this scene into 1.4. It's still, the problem was actually baked in, as you can see. Well, I guess I'll just use her hair color here to see if it, yeah, it still happens there too. So I have no idea why that's happening. The important, and I also downloaded the latest Tahoma2D to load it up, and that's what this is. Can't remember what the build number is, 1.5.2. So I've got the latest version, and whatever is causing this is still causing it. Okay, so this is not an artifact of the display. It is not, apparently, because it seems to be baked into the images itself, into the pixel grid. So anyway, so the question is, has anybody seen this before? There does not seem to be any remedy. I had to bring the shot, what I had of it, before I did the fills. Let me see if undo even works. It does. It seems to, well, no. Okay, so the undo doesn't really work. So anyway, the point is, this seems to be baked into the TLV file. What the corruption is or why it's happening, I have no idea. And as a result, I had to take what I could salvage, bring it into Krita, and finish the shot there. So this was it was a big downer because I was kind of enthused about getting more involved with Tahoma again. And then, second shot I worked on, this completely bizarre filling artifact. By the way, all this purple or pinkish sort of highlight stuff, that's something new in this latest version. I'm not sure I love it, but there it is. Okay, so I'm going to check the chat and see if there's does anybody know anything about this? There's a couple people watching, and Tom's one of them. Maybe you got some insight, but I'm kind of bummed out because I'm not really feeling like I can trust Tahoma. And I mean, this is nothing fancy or special here. This is just a tune, a smart raster level, just doing a plain old fill operation. And I tried different things like using the lasso fills and stuff, and Anyway, so if anybody's seen this before, let me know what the heck you think's going on, because if it's fixable, upgrading to the latest version didn't help at all. So, all right, so back to the show. Let me turn on the preview. There's been a good bit going on. So I think the last thing that was probably showed on the live stream was this sequence. So, hey, what'd you say your name is, kid? Or no, it's that's later. Well, it must be quite an intrusion into Gripson. It's no problem, Governor. Not with good help like young. What'd you say your name was, kid? Oh, it's. Monkey? Got it. Yeah, I don't know what we do with that old monkey around here. Maybe he should stick to washing dishes. So you get the idea. She's asking how it's going. Well, it's always a good idea to have a backup plan. And then this. Every time I watch it, it cracks me up. Now, it's obviously got some slop to it, so it's not a shot that you would want to necessarily linger on, but it is funny. I took the shot of the guy throwing the bucket of water out the window and just modified it so he's now throwing Melchizedek. You can see his mouth going like, wait, I mean, I can explain. Okay. So that brings us up to date, doesn't it? So anyway, so where do we go from here? I actually simplified my Blender file by deleting everything that came earlier and saving under a new name so that just a little less cumbersome. Going forward, I do think I'm going to be reverting back to the way I used to do it, where, let's do a storyboard that may be as long as it needs to be, maybe even a whole episode, but then the actual production, putting it all on a single timeline. Blender can handle it. It's not like there's memory or performance issues with it, but you're always having to change your start and end points in the edit and this sort of thing. So anyway, the episode is storyboarded all the way out to the end. So basically I just need to plow through and get to the finish. So this sequence I'm working on right now, the guy throws Mel out the window, or out the door. Never come back. So they're peeking. He's like, ugh. And I'm thinking that these guys you'll hear like, psst, come on. And then Mel gets up and runs away. And when he shows up, forget food. What does he say? Forget food. This is not working. Let's just get back in the boat and get to Nippur. And for those who are worried about these poor kids that haven't been able to eat for a couple days, okay, let's do that. Huh, wait, what? Hey, come back here. Get back here, you little rodent. And so this is Monkey running away. Ooh, what is he doing? I don't even remember drawing that. I love that. That's going to be a fun one to animate. What is he doing? And he pops up with this. Monkey's our backup plan. So that harkens back to his comment later that it's always good to have a backup plan. So then we fade to, and then we're on the river, and then this basically gets us out of the episode. Okay? Any questions? Feel free to chime in. But anyway, that brings us up to date. So I think all I'm going to do on this session probably is just do a little tightening up of the timing. This all can be quite chaotic because he's flying through the air. Okay. Don't really need to add any keys to this, because the only thing that's going to really animate probably is going to be something like this. Just, and don't ever come back. Honestly, as I look at that, I think I'd like it better if it was more like up here. So I'm going to change the drawing. Okay. Keep rocking. Get back out of edit mode. So they kind of peek out. See what's going on. Mel kind of starts coming around. Okay, so this would be where it's like, psst, psst. Okay, so. Okay, I'm going to put one tween in here just for my own enrichment. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move them a little bit. It's like the old snap and it's like the old hold and snap idea. Hold, snap. See, just that little modification of that pose made the tween work much better. Okay, so this, don't really need to do anything with this here. We're going to obviously wiggle his hand so he's signaling Mel to come over. And then this is all. I think there should probably be a slightly greater pause there. I think we can accomplish that though by just moving this one back. So, okay, that I don't like. I do want to see them move out of frame, back out of frame, because it matches what I had earlier in that keyframe. When Mel shows up, so that's his silhouette there in the foreground. They're back kind of peeking behind the wall. And I don't even remember, I'll have to look at the script, but I don't remember why their eyes are darting back and forth. So I guess that's probably, other than maybe tightening up some of the drawings in here. I'm not really in the mood to do ink and paint at the moment, although that may change. I may just start doing it. At the end of the day, it's all got to get done sooner or later, right? So, is Tom around? You who are in the chat, please identify yourself. But yeah, if Tom's around, I am curious if he has any insight about that weird Tahoma2D issue. That issue was sufficiently egregious that, you know, obviously, Dave, were you saving your work? You know, it is totally true that I made the strategic error of getting into what I was doing too much and didn't save as readily as I should have. So that's on me. Okay, so that should really have. Uh-oh. Sorry. Guess I need to actually go back to the actual keyframe. Am I muted? Oh, I might be. Huh. I'm not muted. No. That's strange. Huh, that's very strange. Check, check, check. Let's check the recording devices. Hang on. Properties. Levels. Okay, so there I turned the level back up. For why it keeps getting turned down, I'm not sure, but very, very low. Is it better now? The level was down and I did turn it up. Huh, okay. Okay. It was, but Jim P, by the way, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so could be your volume coming in, Tom. Maybe somebody's been monkeying with yours the way they've been monkeying with my recording level. So anyway, Tom, did you happen to see the question I asked about Tahoma? I can recap it real quick if you want. Okay, all right, let me just show you real quick what happened the other day. It was pretty disappointing, to tell you the truth. I was pretty, frankly, kind of stoked about getting back into working with Tahoma more. So I was using 1.5, and what I'm about to show you, well, okay, let's put it. I'll give you the quick recap. Is I did do this shot, which involved plastic tool and all kinds of things, and everything worked fine. I even did the background painting directly into Tahoma, and everything was cool. So I did that, and then I get into this next shot, And here's where it all went wrong. Okay, so what I did was, all I did was a pencil test, and then I did the ink, and I was doing the fill work. And, okay, so just so you know, what you're about to see has not failed to happen every time I've tried it over several days. I loaded up the latest version of Tahoma, so that's what this is. This is not 1.5 that I was using. It's 1.5.2 or 9 or whatever the dot number is. This is the latest. I also loaded it into 1.4. Okay? So I guess the question is, have you ever seen this before? Here's what happened. I hit the fill tool. I'm just doing nothing special, and then that happens. This one, for some reason, all filled fine. Now, will it still... I don't know. Let me try her hair. Yeah, see, it's determined to do that. You ever seen that? And when I reload it in other versions or whatever, the and plus if you look at the level strip, you can see that this corruption is baked in. And so I was able to go back to an earlier version of the shot, but yet, and this is with, I've restarted Tahoma and, everything you would expect to maybe do, I've done. And it's tenaciously doing this. Saw it a year ago, but you haven't had it happen to you. That's very weird. Very, very, very weird. So, for me, that was like, I don't know. I mean, if I can't even trust it to do the most basic fill operation. I mean, what do you do? It's really, yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. I do remember seeing this or something like it myself years ago, but not anything recent. So, and it's got something to do with I mean, obviously I've done a bazillion scenes using this particular brush / material for the ink, and it is a my paintbrush. So I wouldn't think that has anything to do with it, since I've used it a million times and never had this issue before. Refer visible? Maybe. I don't think so though, because let me just revert. I don't think so, mainly because when I did it, this was not on anyway. But where's refer visible? That's implicit hold. Where did you say it was? The tick box up and to the right on the toolbar. Where the heck is I guess I should be in this. Okay, and what am I doing? I'm doing the fill tool. It'd be up on here, I suppose. Refer visible. Yeah, refer visible is off. So, again, nothing particularly special here, other than the fact the lines are a little winky. Let's try this. Let's just try this. The truth of the matter is, now that I'm thinking about it, I actually did do the ink with the Tighten Up brush, which is really more like a pencil. I was just kind of trying something different, just to shake things up. But let's go ahead and let me just go over these lines with the actual ink color. Okay, and then just to make it fair, I'll cut a line across there so that I know I've got a closed shape. And let's just see what happens. I didn't really try this. Yeah, same thing. Weird. Weird, weird, weird. Tick on it and see what happens. Yeah, and unfortunately, if I hit, this is where you can tell it's some kind of corruption. I just hit undo, and instead of undoing all of it, it just undid this region. So let me go back a couple steps. I keep reloading it. So discard the changes, load the scene anyway. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, let's turn refer visible on. I'm still going to leave this off because it obviously shouldn't be a requirement, right? If you see anything along here that you think is strange as well. What's the segment? What the heck does the segment option do? Do you know? I don't know, but it's filling in memory. It's not actually the bitmap until you save, right? Okay, that'd be fair. Okay, so that's still going to happen. Let me check something here. All right, let me go ahead and revert it. Yeah, this is definitely a new one for me. Okay, so you're saying, let me look at your instructions closely. Because Jim, I haven't. It would be interesting to render it, like do this, do this. Okay, so far what I can say is that the corruption is in the level strip. It's baked into the image itself. When I saved it this way and reloaded it, all of that was still there. So it does seem to be baked into the bitmap, as you say. Now, let's see here. Let's do a preview render. Yeah, see, the preview render is still showing it. Does that kind of answer your question? I don't want to render it to disk. And the flip side is the fill banding problem. Normally it tries to find where to end a fill, but if pixel isn't solid enough, it keeps going. If we do other save options, well, what you're trying to get at is whether the bitmaps themselves, but the TLV file, the only way you can really look at a TLV file, I'm talking to Jim right now, would be to load it into Tahoma2D. So are you saying save the level strip separate? I'm just making sure your instructions are clear here for me. Are you saying take this level strip and save the strip and then load it into a new scene? In fact, let's do it this way. We might as well, if we can get something out of it, why not? So, okay, so what I'll do is I'll save this level strip. I believe this is where I do it. Is that correct? I never save level strips by themselves. Like, I don't think I've ever done it. So, or is it on the level menu? Save level. Okay, I'll do save level as. And do I really want to put it in the drawings folder? I kind of don't. I actually want to put it here in my episode 3 top level folder. So we'll go to scenes and okay, and then we'll just go down here to episode 3. Patience, my friends. Patience, my friends. There it is. Why does that say episode? That's wrong. That's a anomaly. Well, when you have a really big project, sooner or later there's always some kind of garbage that begins to pile up in your folders if you don't pay really close attention. However, this is where I want to be. Episode 3. And then I'm just going to call this corrupt level. Okay, so the corruption is not baked in. Just for kicks and giggles, let's do this. We'll grab this. And by the way, this might be a clue too. I do remember when this all happened, for a period of time, this image, the middle image in the sequence, was showing blank in the thumbnails, you know, for whatever that's worth. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to file level, we're going to save the level as, same location, corrupt level filled. Okay, so are we on the same page now? Now if I open a new scene and try loading those levels, just drop them in, see what they do. Okay, so I'll come back to that in just a moment, and first I'll try what Tom just said. Okay, so what would we do? We would go here. I think presumably we'd probably want it to be a smart raster level again. And so, yes, actually, I guess that works. Let's just try it. So, are we okay so far? So if I take this and I hit fill, I want to turn off the sketch, by the way. But now I'm going to try refer visible here. So let's turn on refer visible while it's on and see what happens. That fills. Okay. This doesn't quite, but that might be a closed shape problem. And so that I can live with, but let's keep going. Okay, so why don't we try, we're in freehand mode, why don't we see what this does? I wonder if I've got, I want to make sure I've got the right, yeah, I didn't want selective to be on, so freehand doesn't seem to be doing diddly. This is actually very strange. You've got a little marching ants type box around this region. Oh. Okay, there's the corruption. And it seems to be adding it actually to the first frame. So at least so far, just with a cursory attempt, that doesn't seem to be a path that's going to lead anywhere useful. But let's try this other thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a file browser in the other window, go to episode 3, and then find my level, corrupt level TLV. Let's drop this in and see what happens. Okay, so we've got the 3 frames. Interesting, I must say that, okay. So apparently the TLV does not keep track of the length of any individual frames. That's hardly the end of the world though. Okay, so now let's take this fill operation. Ah, doggone it. Okay, so that's a no-gi. And then the one that was already corrupt with the with the corruption baked into it, yeah, and it loads that way. So yeah, that's there you go. When you search on forums, they're referring to this as fill banding. And on original layer, take the fill depth up from 0, stay off of 0. Okay, that might be, that actually, you know, we could get into the old software development rant, but honestly, that sounds like a pretty good possible fix. Sounds quite reasonable. Okay, so you're saying, let's go to the fill. All right, this, anything but 0. So we'll just go with 1. And by the way, I want to note, this is actually important now that you bring this up, and I don't want refer visible on, by the way, is that when this all happened, I do remember fiddling with my fill depth, because traditionally this has always been like, I don't know, it's probably been something like that forever. And I do know that I changed it, and it hasn't traditionally been at 0. So maybe that has got something to do with it. I don't know. Let's find out. Ah, crap. That's too bad. I kind of thought it was going to work. We are not lucky. Okay, so move off 0 and fill depth. Yeah. So that did not help. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I didn't really want to get into a big process with it. I just was wondering if maybe you happen to know, like if it's something you bumped into before. So, well, Blender's still working, so we'll just stick with what works. But so this is the last bit that's leading into what we're seeing right here. Is when Mel sees Monkey, the guy slaps him on the back, water falls all over Vespar. Maybe he should stick to washing dishes. Luca looks in the window. How's it going, Tia asks. He says, well, let's just say it's a good idea to have a backup plan. And then they hear this noise, and then it's, ah! Okay, so. Ta-da! That's where we're at, friends. Yeah, if you find something, let me know. I mean, don't kill yourself. I appreciate the effort. I figured if anybody had a clue on it, it would probably be you, so. Okay, so what have we been doing? What we've been doing is when we go to ink, I turn off the strength. And what did I do? I believe it was the post-processing that I turned on. Yep. Turned on the post-processing. I was using stabilize and then found it was less distracting to just use the post-processing. I am using the wrong ink. Sorry. This should be charcoal ink. So from here on, it's pretty straightforward. Just ink and paint. Nothing really to say here. It's just go, go, go. It all goes by so fast that you're not really gonna be able to notice the frenetic nature of all of it, which is kind of the whole idea. And as I said at the start, I don't know how long I'm gonna go here. I was thinking I wanted to post the thing about Tahoma because I was like, if somebody knows something, then it'd be good to find out. So I may just knock out a little bit of ink here and call it good for the evening. But things are moving along nicely. I mean, I'm up to almost 20 minutes on the episode. Won't be long. I'm going to have to start thinking about writing episode 3. Should be fun. Well, episode 3. This episode is it's not like filler or anything. There are some important things we learned, but for the most part, it's more of a kind of a fun diversion type episode, and then the next episode is going to be a lot more packed with information that fills in the gaps, some of the gaps about Mel's background. You know, who is he? How did he get sucked into this ridiculous situation? Okay, I don't need to draw his whole hand, obviously. Belt, bottom, knobby knees, that's gonna be fun to color, right? And probably the bottom of his sandal should be visible as well. Not too bad. Yeah, and I tell you, the thing that made me really start to feel bullish on Tahoma2D was actually the fill check tool. I happen to think that is Tahoma2D's killer feature. If you're putting it against, you know, whatever's your toolkit, you know, Blender, Krita, whatever, the one thing that is really nice is that fill check tool, because then at least you know, because all the time goes to ink and paint, and that's really where most of the time goes. And so when you know that you have filled shapes, it's really helpful. Now you can kind of achieve that these days in Krita with the you know, it does have a lasso fill tool, so you can lasso your whole character, if it fills, you're probably in good shape, although that's not necessarily true. Because if this shape is a closed shape, but one of the shapes inside of it isn't, then the fill check tool will show that it's compliant and is going to fill just fine, but then it turns out it actually doesn't. So you do need to kind of work from the, generally work from the inside out, right? So when you're inking, it's better to, if you're using the fill check tool in Tahoma, it's better to do his eyes first and then this shape and work out from the center so that you're not getting fooled as far as what's actually fillable and what's not. You guys know what I'm talking about. I think you do anyway. Fill bending is something that's haunted Mud and John for years based on Discord chat. Does he know if it's when I look at it as a programmer, the thing I wonder is this a part of the code where what Tahoma2D is doing is a little bit intermingled with the GPU in a way that it maybe shouldn't be? I mean, you're going to get a performance advantage, presumably, right? But, I mean, at the same time, the concept of a reasonably performant flood fill, we've known how to do that for 30 years. I mean, there's nothing new about that. And there's nothing that particularly hard about it. It's a little hard to make it fast, but it's not hard to make it work. And so it's just, I just wonder if there's something a little incestuous going on between the GPU that probably in the general case is a performance win, but then when something goes a little winky, you know, there's not a lot of recourse. Like, what are you going to do? You can't, you know, that's code you can't get at, you can't fix, right? So he referred to the fill logic, made a change, then changed it back. Okay, really? Huh. Golly, then I'd really be thinking about what, boy, let me gather my thoughts here. I should quit starting sentences and not finishing them. I'd be thinking about how in the development process you could confirm that things are working reliably. And in this case, because it's such an egregious problem, you know, you'd want a pretty robust set of tests to make sure that you're not missing something that only happens very occasionally, which is obviously what we are dealing with for sure. Otherwise, it would happen all the time to everybody. Boo-doo-boo, boo-doo-boo, boink. Okay, yeah, I figured if we have some crazy fingers flying around in the screen, would maybe be fun. Regression testing with a functional test script would be a good start. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a flood fill, based on the logic, it does appear that it's kind of your traditional flood fill, in the sense that it's, for those that might watch that don't know what we're talking about. Basically, with a flood fill, you know, you click here, okay, and then what the software basically is going to do is it's going to say, okay, I'm in a zone that is clearly an area that needs to be colored in. So now the software knows that, and then what it typically does is it runs along until it bumps into a color that's sufficiently different from the fill color to qualify as an edge, and then it basically goes back the other way, and it basically does this. And then you've got to have other logic that says, okay, once it's gone as far as it can go, then of course you have to come back and go in the other direction. And then the part about it that's difficult is actually this. I mean, from a logic standpoint, the part that traditionally with flood fills is difficult is this, because you've got a definite edge here and you've got a definite edge here, but the software has no way of knowing that if you loop around the corner that this line actually continues back over here. So that's what makes, I mean, it's one of the things that makes flood filling a little difficult, for sure. I never, when I was working on the web, the cloud-based or browser-based drawing tool that I created a couple of years ago, never really finished it because there's no good reason to, but I never got to the flood fill stage. I had an inking tool with smoothing, pretty good pencil thing going on, but I never did get to tackling the flood fill problem. Partly because I knew once I did, it was going to be at best a long weekend, and at worst it could be something that takes a couple weeks to sort of get everything figured out, and I didn't want to take the time. Is pretty much the gist of it. That's the story. Is 3 level types? I have to think about that. I mean, intuitively, I feel the 3 level types shouldn't make any difference. And the reason I feel that way, just intuitively, is because if you're going to do a flood fill, at some point in that process, probably fairly early in the process, you're gonna probably do you're gonna figure out what the borders are. It's gonna have to be rasterized. It's got to be turned into pixels. Now that's more complex. The grease pencil, it's very complex because with the grease pencil, you're doing a fill operation where indeed the lines that you're filling may not only not be on a flat plane with the color that you're putting in, but not only that, but you could actually have a line that progresses a lot in the Z direction. Like this line could actually be way back here. And so Blender kind of gets it right in the sense that they go, well, obviously the first thing you need to do is project it onto a flat plane to calculate where the flood fill would want to successfully occur, right? So the Blender code probably is very interesting about that, but I wouldn't have a clue where to look in the Blender code to see how they implemented it. They also, of course, it was also implemented in the UV editor. So I mean, even on just a regular pixel basis, the the flood fill's been implemented there at least twice in Blender, Badoink. Okay. Poof. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I mean, I find it weird about animation software just because if you think about a paint program, what's a paint program got to do right? Like at a minimum. Probably you got to do what I'm doing here, which is you got to be able to draw lines and shapes. Blending modes, But once you get past the stuff that's well established that many people have implemented in many softwares, meaning about painting, when you factor in animation, theoretically all you're doing is you're taking an individual painting that might have a bunch of levels and you're saying, well, let's pre-render that and then let's put it in a stack so that when you play it back, it just plays them in sequence. So there's nothing inherently about the animation process that should make the actions that you take in the animation program that you also would have to take in any paint program that doesn't animate. You get where I'm going with this? If the stuff that you would have to do anyway is pretty easy to do in a relatively robust or stable way, the only thing you're adding at the animation stage is stacking up the pre-rendered sequences so you can play them back. I mean, that's pretty much it. Now, it's not that simple because you got to think about, well, when are you going to pre-render it? In the case of Krita, I think at this point whatever they're doing is not right. And that's because you can't reliably scrub, right? Which is kind of ridiculous. The images would have to be pre-rendered in order to scrub. So, anywho. And I don't know who gets it right. I don't know. If Amar's here, maybe he would say Clip Studio Paint gets it right. I'm not sure. TV Paint kind of got it right. They definitely have a very robust and nice flood fill algorithm in TV Paint. And you can tell when you use it that it's slow. Like, it's not instant like in most programs kind of strive for. It's slow, which I love that, because to me that tells me that the developers are going, okay, we are placing a higher value on having this fill operation occur perfectly than we are on having it be as fast as possible. And that is always the best choice. Reliability is infinitely more important than speed. Speed's hardly ever actually that important. You have to really bog a system down. Like, for example, if I was writing a paint program and now I've got a brush engine, and actually every single time there's a mouse move event, like right now, to create that line right there, there's probably, I don't know how many it would be, but there could be 200 mouse move events right there, right? So you say, okay, well, I want to have a fancy schmancy brush engine. Okay, that's fine. You can do that. So then what you do is, in that mouse move event, you divert over here, and inside of a function, you do all the things that you need to do in order to create a tiny little bitmap. I mean, this is one version of a brush engine. But you need to generate a little tiny bitmap, which could have masks and could have blurring. It could have a lot of things, right? And that's all going to happen in the background in the space of time it takes for that one mouse move event, so that it can then blit to the screen and into the buffers what the effect of that brush is supposed to be. It's not particularly complicated. Implementing it so it works exactly as desired and performant is obviously not trivial. But it's not conceptually complicated really at all. Not, at least, I mean, that's my opinion. There's really, honestly, there is not much in animation software at all that I find particularly complicated. You draw lines, you fill shapes, and you have a mechanism, sort of a playback engine that takes a stack of images and plays them in sequence. So when there's problems that don't necessarily seem to be necessary, you wonder why. Golly, what can I say? In the past, of course, I've sort of picked on Qt, only because if you're going to build on a platform or an API, then probably it works out great 90% of the time, but sometimes you'll get weird things going on, and if it's Qt's fault, what are you going to do? You're at the mercy of the Qt developers, or of course you could get involved in trying to improve Qt, but then again, now like you need a whole nother programming job on top of trying to create animation software. That's a lot to ask. Who's got time, friends? Who's got time? Amar is here. The fill in CSP works great, and the tools must work well with the Japanese. That's what I tend to agree with you. I'm sure that's true. I mean, truth of the matter is, probably if what I want is robustness, and I'm not doing the Blender thing, then probably Clip Studio Paint's one of the better options out there, I suspect. Now, I don't know anything about Adobe Animate these days. I mean, I had Flash back when it was like version 5, and it's okay. It's some of the stuff, like the thing that Flash really got right very early was I don't remember what their terminology was, but it's basically the idea that you've got a small animated thing that maybe you want to have it loop or something, and you can treat this little selection of keyframes as an individual object and then reuse it, or like I say, loop it, blah blah blah. That's one thing that Flash really got right. I just never really loved the the drawing tools were pretty good if you like vectors, but I really don't. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the whole, Blender gets away with it because they do a pretty good job of simulating the way the average pixel pushing application works. They've done a very good job of making this, which is obviously a vector format, feel like working with pixels. And the benefit you get for that is things like sculpting, where you don't have degradation of the image like you do with a liquify tool or similar. Let's see. Let's just go ahead and mark that to there. Call it good. The all-encompassing file is better for me like Blender, Krita, Flash, CSP. Yes. Well, I will say, Amar, that is totally a matter of opinion. Some people like it one and some people like the other. I have to say, what I have found is if I don't want to lose work or have weird file issues come up, then I agree with you. Having everything baked into the file is generally preferred. Because, like I said, with Krita, I've had many situations where the fact that all the images are saved in the Krita file has saved me. And the thing about Krita, that's one thing Krita really does get right. I mean, if you look at Krita, a Krita file is in fact an ORA file. It's the ORA format. Essentially, a KRA file is just a zip file. If you change the extension to zip, you can open it up and you can see all the images in it. Right? So if you had to, you could get to the individual layers and frames in a Krita file by actually going into the zip file, as it were. What they get wrong, and they get it spectacularly wrong, is that the one part of the program where they didn't do that, where they baked what Krita can do into a binary and inscrutable format, guess what it is? Yep, you guessed it. Animation. The only thing that is not easily accessible in the Krita file is the animation frames. Worst idea in the world. That was truly, they took a really good thing they'd done and wrecked it by not seeing it through. And so because of that, I can't go in and salvage stupid problems with an animation file in Krita by just opening up the file and messing with it. That's what I was talking about the other day about text-based file formats. It's the antithesis of hubris. It's the developer saying, you know what? At some point, something's going to go crazy wrong here, and I bet my user would sure appreciate if they could just take a look at the file and maybe suss out what might be going wrong. And you can't do that with binary formats. And I think, as I also mentioned that day, it's been a week or more ago, but is that Reaper absolutely proves that binary formats are not necessary, because Reaper will actually it will bundle a VST audio plugin that you drop into a track in Reaper, like it's an audio music program, blah blah blah. So maybe you've got an equalizer or you've got a reverb. Something like that, right? You drop that in Reaper. If you look at the Reaper file, what Justin Frankel did was basically he said, all right, let's just go byte by byte through the VSTI, the DLL. It's a linked library is what it is. Let's just go through the DLL, and at the binary level, let's just figure out what the value of every byte is in this file, and just turn that into ASCII and encode it in the Reaper file so that I can then reverse engineer that and reproduce it. To me, that was brilliant. Saved my hiney, actually. It allowed me to... actually, let me look at how this is flowing. Oh yeah, it looks pretty good. It allowed me to salvage a project, a sizable project, that had a VST that was misbehaving. So the cost, of course, was that I had to remove that VST from the project, but I was able to do it at the text level by just loading the Reaper file into an editor and taking the whole block of code that represented that VSTI and just delete it. And I was thrilled, you know, it's like it just loaded right back up. Just without that VSTI. I'm like, dude, that's the way to do it. Smart and robust. Smart and robust, my friends. I mean, I talk about code because honestly, if there's one thing I like as well, and arguably is maybe better than this artsy fartsy stuff, it would be that. I've always liked coding, and as I've said many times, tooting my own horn, is that I do have pretty complex PHP/JavaScript applications that have run, you know, without a single crash for 10 years. You know, for a client website, a very, very, very much a custom application type situation that I won't get into the details of because then they'd have to shoot me. But anyway, I think I'm done. I think that's it. 6 o'clock. I've been going for almost an hour. I think it's something about your workflow, Amar. Yes, I agree with that. Having externally referenced, like, to me, just give me the option, I guess, would be nice. There's certain things that brings up a lot of ideas sort of in the background in my mind of ways that the tool could kind of protect you by sort of doing it both ways. So like it's one way most of the time, but you know, you just have to think about the signal flow, the pipeline, to see where the opportunity would be to maybe make it more robust. Did I get this closed? This needs to be closed so that it'll fill. Obviously, it looks stupid, but you're not going to see it because it's not on the screen. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go hang with my baby for a little bit, and who knows? I may be back tomorrow, as you know. There will be more later. Have a wonderful evening, guys.